Scaling innovation, it's harder than you think. Hi, my name is Manoj Mishra. I'm a vice president based out of US for CGI. Today, I'm going to spend the next 12 minutes talking about two things. Talking about how do we scale innovation, and then I also have a story that I was personally involved in helping a top 5 US bank actually scale innovation. Moving on to the next slide. And this one, every time I put this slide, I get a chuckle in the room. Genius is 1% inspiration, 99% perspiration. And that is true for innovation as well. If you look at it, innovation is less about ideas. And we often tend to confuse, when we talk about innovation, we start thinking we need a bunch of ideas. We do need good ideas. But it's more about the discipline of taking the idea from the starting stage to market. And that's what scaling innovation is, and that requires more discipline than you think. So let me start by sharing the story of a top 5 US bank. And this goes back to 2016. And this was a bank which wasn't a top 5 US bank at that point of time and was setting up innovation. However, today we will not focus on how this bank actually set up innovation. And CGI, we are very fortunate to be involved in that process. I was working very closely with the Chief Innovation Officer in setting up that innovation. But the bigger challenge was not just setting up innovation. I think if you look at most banks today, they have their innovation up and running. The challenge was, how do you take the innovation to the next level? How do you really produce value? How do you scale it up for your organization? And I remember having this conversation about how do we scale. And then I remember the Chief Innovation Officer saying the baseball analogy, saying, you know what, the first year will focus on singles and doubles, right? So for those of you who know baseball, you have singles, doubles, and home runs. I mean, as you all know, right? This is essentially what all baseball players essentially strive for. So what singles and doubles really meant was the first year was about making sure the smaller ideas are taken to market. And we used that to build the muscle. So there's a very small team, I think it was 10, 15 people team, the bank and the CGI working together and making sure that we take some of these ideas to market. And these were not not disruptive ideas. These were smaller ideas. At the end of 2017, this was a discussion that we had where we said, now it's time to actually go for home run. What that really means is we need to take an idea to market and the idea needs to be really, really disruptive. And we really got an opportunity. There was an acquisition that happened. The bank did this acquisition. And there was an idea to create a brand new product in the US market. And I remember sitting in the room and sort of doing ideation with the bank and saying, what does it take to basically take this idea to market in 9 months? And it might seem 9 months as a long time, but most banks, at least in the US, sometimes take 12, 16, 18, 24 months to actually launch a product. And by the time, sometimes the market actually moves. So in this case, we basically took this idea from the early stages and launched this product in 9 months. And it was done, it was essentially a proof point and was considered a home run. And that idea generated the bank $7 billion of deposit. And that's what we call home run. If you look at today, this is a very scaled up innovation. What that really means is today we have about 50 CGI members working collaboratively with this bank in various stages of innovation. There's a team that actually works on proof of concept. And proof of concept is often a misused term within banking. There are banks that do proof of concept for 6 months. And we basically time boxed and said, proof of concept cannot exceed 6 weeks. And this team is dedicated to doing proof of concept. And every month, an executive committee, which is essentially senior management of the bank, they sit and they walk through the ideas and decide, yes, this idea is worth pursuing, or no, this idea needs to be shelved or even killed for that matter. And the proof of concept team within 6 weeks actually produces demoable product to this internal committee. So that to me is a very important pillar of scaling innovation. You cannot be essentially just spinning wheels doing ideation. The second important pillar which actually helped scale innovation was, and we call it a factory, but you can call whatever you want, essentially a team that is your delivery team and takes the proof of concept and creates a minimal viable product. Again, easier said than done. But today, for this bank, we have a team that actually, once the POC goes through the vetting process, they take the proof of concept and then works on creating a minimal viable product in basically a very, very condensed timeline. And then the cycle sort of goes on. So we are now at a point where, yes, we are hitting singles and doubles. And that's you have to do that because, as I said, home runs are not easy to come. But the whole scaling innovation or the whole innovation team is built in such a way that it actually takes some of these ideas and essentially goes for the home run. And we have, for the last 2 years, consistently producing 1 or 2 home runs a year. And to me, that's a proof that the innovation is working. You have to have a bunch of singles and doubles, but you got to have at least 1 or 2 home runs in the process. And if you look at it, and again, this slide is a good preview. And I say this very passionately, scaling innovation is less about disruption, more about discipline. You have to think of your organization in a much, much different way. You have to figure out what functions are strategic to you that you want to hold on to. And that is very, very important. You do not want to outsource those functions. But there are certain functions that you really want to make sure that you work with a partner like CGI and sort of help accelerate that. And that combination to me is the best way to also sort of looking at it. And we have used this as a very guiding principle with many clients. And in this particular case, this top 5 US bank to actually help scale innovation. So again, as I said, I must wrap up by saying, if you look at the industry today, most banks, and I work very closely with many banks in the US, where innovation is a boardroom topic. Most of them have set up innovation. Many of them have actually even spinned off a fintech model for the bank, right? So there's a small organization working outside the bank borders and charter of creating innovation. But many banks are still struggling with how do you take this model, not do a checkbox of having an innovation COE, have a lab or stuff, but really scale innovation. And to me, this story that I've been involved, has been a story of not just creating ideas, not just setting up innovation, which we do for many of our clients, but scaling innovation. And I'll end with this last remark. Scaling innovation, again, my friends, is less about disruption, more about discipline. Thank you so much.